It's my little girl's birthday today. We were gonna have a barbecue like you guys. And, she was gonna play outside, and my wife hold my hand, talk about grown-up things. And then when it got dark, we'd all go to sleep together. We'd all sleep together in the dark. And everything would be just like it was before.
Hello, listening people.
Hello.
You're listening to Spit and Polish presents I was going to say the Mystery Box or Unappreciated Masterpieces, but no, it's our other show, Pictures Powwow. I'm one of the hosts, Ron Swinski.
And I'm the other one, Bartek.
Hi, Bartek. How are you?
Good. How are you, Ryan Swinski?
I'm very well. I got overwhelmed introducing our show because we have had so many different shows on our show.
Yes.
So I was like, which one are we doing?
To be honest, I was thinking it as well. So when you said it, I'm like, yeah, wait, what?
So we're Spit and Polish.
Yes.
Likingly, because we're always spitting, and we both happen to be Polish.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a little joke there, you see. We say Polish, and then it's actually, no, it's joke, Polish.
Yeah, I got
Get
it 5 years ago.
Oh, are you getting it now, though?
Yeah.
Great. So, we are your hosts, Ryan and Bartek. We're doing Pictures Powwow, our weekly show in which we do a movie that has come recommended, whether it's from Bartek, myself, or the listening people at home or on the bus or in a grave that I've dug for them.
And this time we gave it to you.
For me,
For you.
and I recommended a movie,
Yes, you did.
Diddy Kong, your favorite Kong. I did
Pretty good.
the choice of Falling Down from 1993, the Joel Schumacher movie.
Oh, and you love Joel Schumacher.
Doesn't everyone?
Yeah, we did Trespass, and you said you love him.
I love Joel Schumacher. But Bartek, we're not alone.
What do you mean? I'm looking around the room right now, and there's only two of us.
Well, that's because we're getting people calling in. Some other podcasters coming in to our area.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah.
Tell me through the form of a chat.
Oh, so we are joined by a fellow podcasting group. These guys talk about TV shows, not movies, though. So, you know, not exclusively more TV shows, but we are joined by the Chatz podcast, or Chatz Kids. How are you guys?
Hello, welcome. Well, it's us. We're here from the United States.
It's me, Darth Vader from the planet Mars.
Wait a minute. It appears the other Chatz kid has transformed.
I'm a spaceman.
No, this is about right. This is how he is. I promise you. In private, that's how he talks. As soon as the mics go off, he's just, hey guys, good episode. Now.
Oh, God, I'm sorry. I forgot we were on mic. Hey, what's up? That's embarrassing.
Good. So, do introduce yourselves and tell us a bit about your show for our listening people and for us. I mean, Bartek hasn't had the chance to listen because he doesn't watch television shows. So he was like, "Well, what can I engage in?" I'm like, "Well, you don't watch TV."
We're about to have a regular West Side Story snap off over visual media.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's such a polite sounding version of it. Yeah, so my name's Magellan, and I'm here with Allen. And we are co-hosts of Chatz, a television podcast. We have been the best of friends since we were in high school together, and the way that we stay friends is through our kindness to each other, and also by watching the entirety of like cult classic TV shows, parceled out 2 episodes at a time per week, sort of like the anti-binging is how we do it. And currently we're watching Babylon 5. That's what we're doing right now.
I love Babylon 5. I've talked
fantastic
about it on the show before because we've had a lot of Babylon 5 actors appear.
Yeah, you started watching it again, then everyone from the show keeps appearing.
Everyone's like, "Hey, it's me!" Or when we did an episode on Dickie Roberts, former child star, the character who's played by Jeff Conway, Zach Allen from Magellan 5, he's in it in a segment where it's like, and all the child stars of Hollywood sing a song, and I'm like, but he's never been a child star. He was known for being Kinnicky, but he was like a full-grown adult, so why is he there?
He calls himself Kinnicky in the movie.
He was a teen star.
In that movie, yeah, the like 28-year-old teen star. Yeah, like I love it. So you guys have talked about a variety of TV shows. So currently you're doing Babylon 5. What are some other ones that you guys have covered in the past?
So we consider Chatz on 5, our 6th season. So in the past, we've done Farscape, which was our first season, our sort of big marquee introducing ourselves podcast. We did Freaks and Geeks. We did Avatar: The Last Airbender. We did, John, what else did we do? The Newsroom.
I really thought you had it. I trusted you
I was
entirely.
so close. I was so close. No, it's The Newsroom and it's Pushing Daisies. That's everything.
Yeah, you
Pushing
got
Daisies.
it. You got
Does
it.
it
Yeah.
does it bother you that your 6th season is a show that has 5 in the title?
We've had this
Every
conversation.
single week.
Yeah, every week he
Every
says this
every
is
week.
season 6, Chatsalon 5, and I hate it.
So when you do season 7, you got to do this TV show Saturn 7, right? That's what you got to do, and then season 9 would be Deep
Yeah,
Space Nine.
we're gonna
You
do
gotta
Seventh
cover-
Heaven. It's gonna be really good.
Great.
Oh,
Seventh
God.
Yeah.
Heaven. Yum yum. So guys, we did Falling Down. I'll give the listening people a bit of heads up. If you listening people have not had the chance to watch Falling Down, recommend that you do, because we're going to get into a full-on discussion about it. We're going to go through the ins and outs, the intricacies, the plots, the characters. So if you haven't had the chance, do check out Falling Down, because we're going to get into it. Now, Bartek,
Yes.
you've done quite a lot of movies on this show.
I made all of them.
You've made all of them.
When you say done, we've talked about them. We've done the talk.
This is our second Joel Schumacher movie on the podcast. We
Yes.
did Trespass. I'm going to ask you, how would you rank the Joel Schumacher movies we've done on the show from best to worst out of the two? Which one's better? Which one's worse?
Jumping back to a sentiment I had at the end of our Grease 2 episode, obviously I think that Falling Down is the better film, but because the other one's an unappreciated masterpiece, I have to fight for that one.
Okay, so you're fighting for Trespass.
I have to.
So you're choosing Ben Mendelsohn over Michael Douglas. It's a tough pick.
Again, I'm saying I prefer one over the other, but I have to defend the unappreciated masterpiece because that was a mission statement.
No, fair enough. So, Allen and Magellan, what is
Yeah.
your history with this film Falling Down? Have you seen it before having to do it for this show?
I was born the year that it came out. Is that
Ditto.
that's a
Same
history of a kind, I suppose.
So you could have seen it then. You could have seen it in the cinema. No excuse.
Yeah, I could have popped out the womb and then I couldn't have seen it in the cinema, but I could have gotten it on VHS or at Blockbuster or something. But I've never seen it, and I'm realizing right now I think this is the first time I've ever seen a Joel Schumacher film.
You haven't seen Batman and Robin?
Nope, I haven't. I have not.
Batman Forever?
Nope, I have not seen that one either.
The Lost Boys?
The Incredible Shrinking Woman.
No, none of the
They're real.
above.
You're making these up.
None of the above.
Not Phantom of the Opera?
Nope.
He did a Phantom movie? Bummer.
Yeah, he did it with Gerard Butler.
Ah, yes, I remember this.
Do not need
yum,
to
yum.
watch that, it sounds like. Yeah, so I don't have any history with it. I mean, I like Michael Douglas. I like The Game. I've seen him in that. I feel like that's kind of around the same era.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. So, had you at least heard of this movie before having to do it?
No, I had not. Maybe Alan had, but I had not.
Well, so what about you, Alan? Any history with this? Heard of this before having to do it for the show? Anything?
So I definitely had heard of this film. Way back in the day, pre-podcasting, I was a big fan of the now defunct film website Screen.com, rest in peace. And they mentioned, I remember them mentioning this film as being like, I wonder if this actually holds up or if this is, terrible in hindsight. But they remembered liking it back in the day. Mm-hmm. And then in terms of my history with Schumacher, I've seen Batman and Robin. A friend of mine owned a VHS copy of that movie, and it's bad. It's fun. It's fun. Bad. I might put on a commentary chats list because
it's amazing.
Ice to Meet You is just Arnold Schwarzenegger as Mr. Freeze.
My favorite is the mad scientist who turns Poison Ivy into Poison Ivy, who plays Lex Luthor's father in Smallville. That guy.
Oh, wow.
He has the full mad scientist there with the white streak in it, and she's basically like, I'm gonna tell the authorities on you. You're not gonna get away with this crime that you're committing. And he's like, really? Well, I'm so sorry to hear that. I'm just afraid you're going to have to die. And he pushes her into a vat of poisons, and she becomes Poison Ivy. But the way he delivers it, he's really genuine at first. He's like, I'm so sorry to hear that, but I'm afraid you're going to have to die. And he just goes full crazy. And you're upset that he isn't this main villain of the movie. You're like, come back. He'll be back for Smallville in a few years' time.
Yeah, it's a very campy film. And then the only Joel Schumacher film that I have seen is 2002's Phone Booth.
Oh, that
which,
is a classic.
is appropriately also a very messy film that attempts to say some big things and kind of whips it in a fun way. I really like the premise of Phone Booth, but it's just such a goofy film in a lot of ways.
So my history with Joel Schumacher is I've seen about, I would say now, 95% of his movies. I think there's a couple I haven't seen. Soon I will. Because for our other show, we have a Joel Schumacher movie in the box of mystery movies. That's The Incredible Shrinking Woman with Lily Tomlin that I've not seen. But I've seen most of his feature films, at least. I don't know if he's done anything short films or TV, but I've never liked many of his films. Falling Down is the one I like. And I have said many times Joel Schumacher frustrates me because Falling Down proves, in my opinion, that he is a fantastic, brilliant, and wonderful director. And he's never, in my opinion, reached the heights that he does in just pure direction, filmmaking that he does in this particular feature film, Falling Down. So I have a real love-hate relationship with Joel Schumacher because I'm like, I've seen your brilliance, and you've never done it again.
Okay, so when you're editing this episode, make sure you add in a part about Trespass.
Oh yeah, and Trespass, great film. It's got Ben Mendelsohn and Nicolas Cage. What do you want? It's got Nick Cage,
Oh
man.
man,
Nicole
that sounds
Kidman,
great.
And Nicole Kidman. I mean, what else do you want? So, what did we all think about the film Falling Down? Now, Bartek, before that we all get into it, what was your history with this movie?
I hadn't seen it before. Ryan showed it to me earlier this year, so he knows what my history is. But I hadn't heard of it before you showed it to me.
And I grew up with this movie. This was like a staple for me.
Really?
I've
Yeah.
seen this a million times. Yeah.
Yeah, we had a movie night and Ryan said, okay, we're going to watch Falling Down. And I think I'd heard him mention it a few times, like, oh, it's a film he likes. And then he showed it to us and we all really, really liked it.
Oh, that's nice. So Bartek, second time watching it,
Mhm.
how did you feel?
Yeah, it still held up. It was good as the first time, and the first time was still this year.
Nice.
Yeah.
What about you guys? What did you guys feel about this movie, having not seen it before and having now seen it?
Oh man.
So-
Yeah, go for it, Alan. Take it.
Well, I think I'm not going to come on here and say, like, this movie you like actually sucks, but we have a unique perspective on this film being from the United States and growing up with media like this and understanding how, like, films from this time affected the rest of cinema and how culture and the things that have happened in history have affected cinema. So this movie, in a lot of ways, to me, felt very dated, but, like, in a really fascinating way. Like, the way that
It felt both
is
dated
critiquing-
and prescient in a certain way.
Exactly. Like, in its prescience, it also feels dated because, like, on one hand, yeah, people like, I guess we're gonna call him D-FENS because that's what the cops call him and what
And they credit
the
him
film's
at the
credits
end.
call him.
Yeah.
That
People
or
like
Michael
Defense
Douglas.
Or Michael Douglas. Yeah, he
Don't
has
you
a
dare
name.
call
They
him
give him like
Bill.
a real name.
Yeah, his name's Bill
But-
Foster, but we won't call him that.
No, absolutely not. People like him would exist today. They'd be big fans of Trump. They would be big MRA people. You know,
Yeah.
people have lauded this film in the MRA community as iconic and so important. And like, man, people wish that they could also shoot up a McDonald's. And it's like, I think when you talk about Joel Schumacher being a great filmmaker, he is for sure at the end of the movie trying to get across the point that this guy is not the hero of this movie. And no
at
matter
the end,
how hard
I thought
he
it was at the
tried-
very beginning.
You would hope so, brother. You would really hope so.
Yeah.
But at the same
Okay.
time, plenty of people watch this, and I, in a way, I sort of agree. The film doesn't go hard enough to make that clear until the very end. And people saw this and came out of it and said, "He's not really the bad guy."
It certainly
We're getting it because we have modern perspective,
It's-
but people have walked out of this film and said, "This guy's cool."
It certainly paints him very
Right.
sympathetically in a way that is, people can choose to interpret that in ways that I don't think are what was intended. My feeling about it is, if I had to guess, it feels like one of those movies, like Fight Club, where on paper the critique of, like, post-globalist, capitalist, like decaying culture America, here are all the things that are wrong with it and what it's doing to us, and also here's all the things that are wrong with, like, how we're perceiving it and acting out against it. It's doing that, and also as a film, I think those things get overlooked because there are other parts that, like, people just are more into. So, like, Fight Club is a film that I think gets gets like chronically misread.
Yeah.
And falling down feels like probably the same thing would happen to it in conversations with similar people, and it's coming out around the same time. And so, looking at it, I think it kind of has like a dark comedic touch on moments like when D-FENS is in the scene that really stuck out to me is when he's in the fast food place, and he's
Whammy Burger,
and he's mad that they're not serving breakfast anymore. And to me, like, I thought that was funny at first, and then I thought about it, and it's like, holy shit! Like, this is, in the 90s, this was a critique, kind of, that could have been read as like a critique of corporations, and kind of as a critique of white male entitlement, but in a sort of like distant way. And nowadays in the United States, like, looking at an entitled white male who's like super racist and misogynist pulling a machine gun in a public place is like not a dark comedy imagined reality. It's like the real fucking world,
Yeah.
And so,
I think...
yeah.
So Adam Sandler was well behaved in The Big Daddy.
Yeah.
He didn't pull out a machine gun.
I understand everything you guys are saying. I can see that this movie can be misread and misinterpreted when it comes to these things with a power fantasy. For me, I have the benefit as well of having seen this movie well over a dozen times. For me, I remember when I first saw it that, you get this power fantasy trip when you see him go through this stuff, but I always felt like with this movie, it always does pivot at the point of when you introduce Robert Duvall's character, that D-FENS, Michael Douglas's character, is in the wrong. When you have the iconic Whammy Burger scene, yes, there's a fun aspect to it because we've all related to that idea of something or other that he explores in this movie where we're trapped in a car, where we're getting yelled at, we can't get the thing that we want. And there's
like
that
2 minutes overtime.
There's that little bit of you that like, man, I wish I could flip out
like
and
GTA
not have
response.
any consequences. I think that the movie does condemn him throughout most of it, but since we're put so much into his shoes that we don't fully see it. I mean, there's a point in the movie in which it's, for me at least, very clear that whether he knows it or not, it's more subconscious, that he is going to murder his wife and child and then himself. And we still have 20 more minutes of the movie after that kind of point where he's with that family in the little pool house or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And yet the movie still has quite some time to go. But at that point, you'll pivot towards liking Robert Duvall's character because for me, they're very much similar types of men, except for one has compassion and one doesn't. Robert Duvall has compassion. He has the ability forgiveness and understanding, while D-FENS doesn't have that anymore or has never had that. Because as we find out in the movie, he's always been a crazy guy. He's always been mentally broken. He's always been abusive. He's always been a man on the edge. But finally, he's been pushed over the edge, and this is our journey to watch him fall down. I think he is mentally broken from the very beginning of the movie when he leaves his car.
Certainly. I agree. The movie squarely makes the attempt to condemn him to the point where he says out of his own mouth, like, oh, whoops, I'm the bad guy. Just in case you didn't know.
Like, looks at camera like, wait, I'm the bad guy? Like, okay, good. They
but
got it.
To your point,
yeah, that's a powerful thing.
Yeah. But to your point about Robert Duvall's character, I think that dude is an asshole, actually.
Really?
because
okay.
the place where his arc ends up, or at least there are two moments towards the end. One where he's on the phone with his wife, and the last interaction he has with her is like, "Shut up!" And he like calls her all this awful
it's
stuff.
Like satisfying. It's
we can talk about that.
And then the other moment is the dude who's like an ass to him at work. He clocks him in the face, and is that not exactly what we're talking about? The sort of like power trip fantasy of like, I just want to freak out on this guy.
Well, we'll delve into the Duvall thing, because I think the interesting thing about this movie, it has three primary plots going on, two of which are more important, the third one is lesser, which is you have D-FENS going on his way home, you have Duvall figuring out the case, and you have his wife. You have D-FENS' wife freaking out about his eventual arrival. Those are the three main central plots. The wife plot is lesser; it's more of a supporting plot, while the other two are symbiotic plots that interwove into one another. Now, Bartek, how do you feel about the things that we've been talking about? Do you feel any of these similarities or the views between these kind of things?
I think an interesting thing to point out is with these three stories is that the first impressions you have of these three characters really kind of stick with you because this is common sense. But when you have a story, you start from the beginning and you move on with your impressions from that beginning. So the first thing we see in the film is the traffic jam on that freeway, the road there, and it looks like a very uncomfortable place to be. It's clearly very hot. There's flies. There's kids being annoying.
His car's braking,
and he just, opens the door, gets out, and says, "I'm going home." That must have felt for him like a very freeing thing to do, just like saying, "Fuck this, I'm going." And I imagine because we don't know this character yet, we don't know where he's going, that's our impression of him. Might be the characters like, oh, this is him winding down, this is him getting better. Obviously, as it goes on, very quickly we realize that's not the case.
Yeah, as soon as we go to the Korean store scene, we know that's extremely not the case.
It's not the case. But you have that first impression, and you might think like, okay, there's going to be some sort of payoff to this, like he's going to feel better by the end, maybe?
He kind of does.
He kind of does, yeah.
But, yeah, this movie has a lot of intricacies when it comes to what you guys said about it feeling dated, but also still feeling very present. What I find interesting about it not being American is seeing this movie as a time capsule of when it was made. I mean, this was filmed during the Rodney King riots. So the boiling tension of LA was very present in this movie.
Yeah.
But I think for me personally that the movie does a really good job of putting you in the shoes of these people living in this world, that you can see it as a time capsule of a moment, but you can also just feel it as the world of the movie, like everything's kind of boiling up, and that's really done well with the fact that it's during a heat wave or like the hottest day of the year. And you got Joel Schumacher's known for being a very colorful director, and what I mean is not only personality-wise and tone-wise, but with actual colors in his movies.
I was just about to say, yeah.
And this movie really does a great job for me of using the right amount of vibrant colors. Because when you say the pitch of this movie, which is a guy walks home and he interacts with people and he murders people along the way or fights with people, you're expecting like a really dour movie. There's a very similar movie to this called Edmund with William H. Macy, and it's set at night in New York, and it's very a dour movie. This movie, it's visually very fun to watch because it's bright and upbeat, and that kind of is a juxtaposition to the brutality of what's going on, but it also complements the dark humor that you have spread throughout this movie. This wouldn't, for me at least, be a movie that depresses me when I watch it. It's a very enjoyable movie, but when you start thinking about all these nuances that the film is putting in there with this character and the environment, it is a very dark movie at its core. But it's not a movie that is like pointing at you and being like, now feel sad. Do you feel miserable? This isn't a misery porn movie. This is an enjoyable movie. For me, at least, I can say.
Oh, I know that on our podcast, we do enjoy doing these films that involve like a main character moving through many environments and meeting interesting characters along the way. I guess that's like an Odyssey thing.
Yeah, it's very much a Fable type movie, this as well, with the duality of these two men that are eventually going to meet. We even have a character that's dressed like Michael Douglas in a scene that's like...
Yes, for a jump scare.
Oh, no, I meant the I'm not economically viable guy. They're dressed the exact same.
Right.
But yeah, when it comes to this being dated, I find it interesting because, like you guys said, it also has this existing thing with you guys in America where this boiling point that you have here in 1993 that they're introducing in this movie, you see this kind of mentality still boiling up and still seething and getting into American life today. Like you guys mentioned, Trump and all of that and the kind of areas that explores. But obviously, this area of American society has been brewing for a very long time. And this film is a part of that journey that we're at now. What I find very interesting, a little touch that I really, really liked that I found interesting, I listened to the commentary track of this movie. There's a bit in the Korean grocery store where he's like, I'm rolling back the prices to 1965. It's like, why that year? And apparently it's like in 1965, America introduced the Immigration Act. And that's when officially America started to change.
Yep.
Okay.
And that's a nice little touch about where this guy's coming from. He looks like he's from 1965. He still has these attitudes from then. He is racist, he is sexist, he is misogynist, he is all these things. But at the same time, I don't personally think that the D-FENS character is a truly unlikable character. He never goes, for me, too overboard with his racism or sexism or stuff until the certain point in which the movie is wanting you not to like him anymore, in a way. Like, you've been given this character stuff in here, but it never goes too far until a certain point when he has the obvious point of no return, which he references in the movie.
Yeah, by the end, when he is sexually assaulting his ex-wife, you're like,
Oh, yeah.
okay, this guy
It's
is gonna
scum.
die.
Yeah.
Like, basically from like not even from the pier onward, I wouldn't even know. I'm not exactly sure what the point is where it flips, but yeah, I agree that there's points at the beginning where you're like, oh, this guy's comical, or this guy has like is frustrated for reasons that we can relate to. And there are two things for me where I was like, okay, I get that this guy is bad. One is when Robert Duvall's character meets his mom, and we learn that he was the kind of person that we hear about in the news that do like school shootings and stuff. Like, he was very quiet. He never talked to people. He had a lot of problems that weren't addressed. And then most importantly, you got to remember where this is coming from historically. Like, where in 1993 we're at. We're talking about the Rodney King riots.
Yep.
We're talking about a black man saying he's not economically viable. That guy gets arrested by the police. D-FENS gets to continue walking around with an assault rifle.
Right.
Yeah.
You know,
That's a good point.
you have that. You're realizing like this is a moment in Los Angeles history. You also have a moment in like America's like corporate history where people like D-FENS, the reason he's called that, the reason his license plate says that, is that he worked as a defense like contractor for the military,
Yeah.
trying to help protect America. He always saw his job as essential and important.
He's a
and
patriot.
it's no longer essential and it's no longer important.
Exactly. And that adds to the grander picture of the thing. Exactly. Like, what I find interesting is most of the characters in this movie, we don't find out their first names. Most of them don't even have names in the credits. They're just this character. When it comes to the economically viable guy, it is very poignant that he is a black man being arrested and he's protesting, and him and D-FENS are on a very similar path, except for one went one way, one went the other. They're dressed the same. I think a lot of this movie deals with the fact that in America, people of all races, all creeds, all levels do have some form of dehumanization, whether it be the Korean store owner being mistaken for what race he is, or
I love that.
and the fact that
both
both
times that
actors, the fact that both actors are actually the opposite race in real life is really funny. Like, the guy who's like, I'm Japanese is actually Korean, and the one who's Korean is actually Japanese in real life. So that's actually
cute.
quite odd. The Korean store owner is in Babylon 5, by the way. He
wow.
played a racist in season 1. He's like, "Did you brand this person?" And he's like, "No, I didn't."
Oh, the branding. Yep.
He's a very great character actor, but I think that that's a point of this movie, is it's exploring all of these topical social issues that are boiling up in American society. This is a guy who's lived his life following the rules. He's following the so-called American dream. He got married, had a kid, he has a job protecting the country. And then, well, that war finished. It's no longer existing. They're winding down. I mean, one of the big money support systems in LA at the time was the military defense aspect. And so that got taken away. So a lot of people lost their jobs. A lot of people had to go back into the society which they're no longer qualified for, which is what he says. Is like, was it too smart or overqualified, or the other way around?
Overeducated,
underqualified,
unskilled.
I don't know which way round it is anymore, because it's so confusing, the world that they live in.
Yeah, I was going to say that same line really struck me as a line that's valuable. I think the value of this film is as a movie that you watch in like a modern America class. You know, I didn't really come to it particularly enjoying it like as a viewing experience on its own terms. I think maybe if I'd seen it like with my dad, who just loves movies and we like to watch these kinds of movies together, maybe I would have liked it. But watching it on my own, it was very much from that kind of like intellectual how does this fit into the modern context perspective. And what struck me about it from that lens is like, this film, if you take the time to analyze it, really does a great job of mapping the mind of white male entitlement and showing you through these vignettes, the things that those kinds of people choose to get upset about is what really struck me, because you see D-FENS getting upset about like the cost of a can of Coke and they're not serving breakfast anymore, and he doesn't bat an eye when the neo-Nazi store owner shouts demeaning epithets towards the potentially homosexual clients of his store. D-FENS just kind of is like, yeah, I'm not bothered by
he's
that.
hiding. He's too busy trying to hide somewhere. It's kind of an awkward kind of direction when it's like it's more focusing on the neo-Nazi than D-FENS.
Yeah, but
he's kind of like trying to hide.
He just doesn't care, like he doesn't really see that as a problem in a way that I think helps to understand him. Like all of the things that he perceives as problems are self-focused, and I think that also helps to read it struck me when the guy is protesting and saying that he's not economically viable. When I saw that clearly, my read of it is like, this guy's saying he can't get a loan because he's black. Full stop, that's what he's saying. And then D-FENS is like, not economically viable. That's what I am. And is like completely ignoring the context and just focusing it on himself and his own struggles and like making it all about kind of his disaffection, instead of seeing where in the context of these larger issues he sits. And so I think that in that way the film is really useful as a kind of like scholarly exercise.
Yeah, I think
what pushes him over the edge with the neo-Nazi is not that he's a neo-Nazi and that he collects military paraphernalia and hopes that it works. It's that he breaks his daughter's snow globe, and he's like, "That's it."
It's even before that. It's the fact that the neo-Nazi thinks they're the same.
Yeah,
that's
you
what
and I were
annoys
good. That's why I
him.
protected
It's
you.
I'm an American. You're sick asshole.
Yeah, he's expressed before that point his displeasure that he's being viewed as a thief.
Or a vigilante. To him, it's a very simple... Here's the best way I describe D-FENS. This is a character that purely lives in the present. He has no concept or no predilection for the future or the past. He lives in the now, and that's all he sees is the now. He has no idea what he's going to do when he actually gets home. And once he starts actually figuring it out, we, the audience, are indicated to, he's probably going to kill his family. And then Robert Duvall says at the end, you were most likely going to kill them. And he still doesn't understand that that's the case. This is a selfish character. This is a narcissistic man who ruined his own marriage because of his anger issues, his narcissism. His mother is completely mentally broken by just living with him. This is a horrifying character study on what happens to certain individuals. A part of his problem is, he's in that phase of life where everything is being made redundant. The middle-class American identity is disappearing in front of his eyes. His job's going away. This international threat is going away. All this stuff. When it comes to the economically viable guy, it is definitely, to me, about his race. But also when you do listen to what he is saying about himself, he's worked this 9-to-5 job. He works overtime, this, and he still doesn't get a break. D-FENS sympathizes with what he can be able to sympathize because he is a mentally broken individual who has very little compassion outside of himself. He sees a mirror there of himself, like, I work that, and it didn't work for me. And it is a very selfish attitude. I think that performance from the not economically viable guy is one of those great little performances, like a one-scene wonder. But like when he says, "Don't forget me," I genuinely don't forget him. I still think about him to this day. I'm like, is that guy okay?
Sure, D-FENS remembered him too.
Now, I think let's talk about Robert Duvall's character arc and his story, and then we can delve more into D-FENS and stuff, because this movie always gets the conversation of the Michael Douglas character, because Michael Douglas, I think we can all agree, gives one of the best performances of his career, yeah?
It is a good performance,
I think
absolutely.
he's just always that good. He's a very magnetic
Yeah.
performer.
This is his favorite performance of his career.
That's weird.
Really?
I can believe that.
And, well, I actually find it very interesting, Michael Douglas, because he considers himself a producer and then an actor. So he said that he chose this role for purely selfish reasons of ego, and he's free to admit that, because he made movies like Basic Instinct and Black Rain and so many other movies from a producer standpoint of what is the best movie to be in. Well, he chose this because he wanted to have the best, like, what is the best role instead, because he had been playing, when you look at his career, he actually plays a lot of reactionary characters.
Yeah.
He is a character actor who reacts to the story, and the ones where he is actually the center of it, like Wall Street or the guy pushing the buttons, is some of his best work. So this is one of those. So I think that whenever people bring up, oh, Jake Gyllenhaal didn't get Oscar nominated for Nightcrawler, I just sit there and go, yeah, well, Michael Douglas didn't get it for Falling Down either, so what are we talking about? I always point to this and go, that's a snubbed performance. And to me personally, I think D-FENS has more layers as a character than the character in Nightcrawler. But that's just me. Now, with Robert Duvall, Prendergast, I think he often gets overlooked because Robert Duvall's giving a very quiet performance. He's very subdued in comparison. Michael Douglas is doing a lot of showy stuff. He's funny, he's crazy, he's intimidating. Well, Robert Duvall's playing like the cop on his last day. Now, I will ask all of you guys this, Bartek, with your first viewing, you'll have to answer this. Did you expect Robert Duvall to die because it's his last day as a cop and they bring it up a lot?
I do remember on the first viewing when it was first brought up, where he was on the highway as well in the first scene, that it was his last day, and I thought like, oh, are they going to be playing that trope? But then the film like beats you over the head with that trope, so it was really this big question of like, are you going to subvert it or are you going to play it straight? So I wasn't really sure where it
and
was
the film
going.
can go either way because it goes with so many kind of tonal shifts. What about you guys? Did you actually expect Duvall to get killed at the end of this?
100%. Yeah, I totally did. And then in the moment where Michael Douglas is like, "Hey, I could kill you, or you could kill me," I really thought that Duvall was going to agree that they shoot each other at the same time.
Well,
yeah.
they kind of do.
Kind of, yeah. Technically, I guess they do.
What about you, Alan?
Yeah, I mean, there is plenty of stuff that I guess I would call predictable about this movie, slightly, and so the cop on his last day does totally get shot. That's the rules.
Yeah.
I was a little disappointed by his ending, just being like, and then he does move to Arizona, because I think that the film could have said a lot more.
Well, okay, we'll get into that, because that is something that people find very divisive and interesting. So, Bartek, do delve us into what happens with Prendergast and his kind of story in this film, from your understanding.
From my understanding, well, it's his last day on the force, and he's been introduced or established as this character who... He's got a wife that's very stressed out about the fact that he's a police officer, and it delves into that whole idea of like, oh, there's some... If you're married to a police officer, you've got to have a certain, like, steeled will about yourself, and this character just does not have it. So Prendergast, Robert Duvall, is a character that now stays behind a desk mostly.
Yep.
And even on his last day...
He got wounded at some point as well. That got mentioned. But yeah. So he's a desk jockey now.
Desk jockey, yes. And with what I said about them beating you over the head with this whole "oh, it's your last day" thing, that attitude towards him that it's his last day kind of sort of makes the other officers kind of see him trying to take his job seriously as not that big a deal, because oh look, you're going to be out of here in a few hours, so don't try to be like
and they don't like him anyway,
and they don't like him
except for one.
Some of them seem to have some sort of affection for him, but there is this whole like disrespect they have towards him.
I think it's more pity. The ones who have some are more pitiful, except for her, his not partner. Like, they're partners, but she's not actually his partner. The chick from Total Recall.
I do think that they...
Oh my God, that's what she's from. Sorry.
Yeah.
No, I do think that they have some affection for him, but definitely they're not respecting him enough.
Because this story deals with a lot of stuff. There's a lot of toxic masculinity in this police office. He gets a lot of disrespect from everyone because he is taking what they consider to be the easy road. He doesn't cuss. That's a real big thing.
Yeah, especially for the boss guy.
The boss, who's the dad in Walk Hard, the Dewey Cox story. I always think of that. I'm waiting for him to be like, the wrong kid died. There's a lot of toxic masculinity going on, but obviously Duvall's story is slowly figuring out the case that everyone's ignoring because they've got so many other things going on, and so many ideas of police officers have of racial profiling and simplifying things because of this, and Duvall's the only one who's kind of noticing a pattern going on. you mentioned his wife.
Yes.
A big part of his story is what you guys mentioned before, his character arc of standing up to his wife. That is a part, that's his character arc on a level. On one of the levels is standing up to his wife. So you guys, my impression is you guys didn't like this?
So here's the thing is what you're saying about how he is in this kind of like toxic masculine work environment, and part of it seems like the resentment that some of the cops have towards him is that he doesn't play along in that environment. Like you said, he doesn't curse. He's like not that interested in there being a stripper there at his going away party, and so it feels like, you know, that's kind of his virtue as a character, is that he's not getting drawn into what's kind of like scummy about the people around him. And what then bothers me is that actually he is kind of a scummy guy. Like he clearly is attracted to his partner.
Oh, really? Okay, interesting.
Clear, like I'm totally reading it that way, as like he's into her.
I read it as that they had an affair.
Yeah,
before.
Really?
something
I
like
read
that
it completely
is
as like
happening.
I read it as a father-daughter relationship because he lost his daughter and she's kind of like a daughter figure. That's how I read it. I even read his relationship with his wife as kind of like a father-daughter relationship because he treats her like a child.
I thought that's what you were talking about, actually.
But no, I
that
think
more
for me
so
personally,
I could buy, yeah.
for me personally, that's my belief of his character because he is a father. He's someone who's always wanted to be a father, and he never. Well, he got the chance and he lost it.
I think the
That's
line
me.
that convinces me that he has like kind of a sexual attraction to her is when they're leaving the restaurant and he says, by the way, something I've never said about my wife is that I love her. And when he says that, I'm like, I don't believe you, dude. I'm not buying it. Like,
wow.
you
Okay.
are saying that to her to like prove it to yourself. Like he's so slow to say I love you. And
okay.
and
Interesting. Wow, I didn't read anything like that. But
well,
wow, okay,
that's
that's
how I'm
interesting.
So I
take.
must be
and
incredibly
then-
boring because I took everything at face value.
Yeah, I took that at face value. What about you, Alan? What did you feel about this whole dynamic with the character arc of Duvall's character and like his wife and the office?
Well, if that last scene where he tells her to shut up didn't read as so triumphant, then I would have been mostly fine and been like, yeah, his relationship and his difference from D-FENS is obviously that one of them had a daughter who lived and the other one did not. And one of them took his realizing that he's useless and went postal, to use a oft-used term.
Yep.
And the other one went to Arizona. But my favorite scene with Robert Duvall by far is the single most stressful film in this movie. The most stressful scene, rather. And this is a film that also has a scene where someone shoots up a McDonald's. So this is saying
A
something.
whammy burger, thank you.
Excuse me, a whammy. We know what we're talking about, but yes. It's the scene where he's on the phone with his wife and also with the woman who's in the whammy burger.
Yep.
And everybody is like, do not hang up on me for 1 second. Say what you're going to say and finish it.
Yeah.
And it's just like thickly concentrated anxiety boiled up into one single scene where everyone is like, this is the moment you need to talk right now. And he's like trying to control it and losing it.
That moment is what especially sells Alan's reading, I think, of there either being an attraction or there having been an affair between the two of them, because he's like so like, I wouldn't say he's comfortable, but he's definitely knows the rhythm of how to do this, of how to like put his wife on hold and then talk to her. And it's clear that what he wants is to just keep being a cop. And
he's a cop who can't stop.
And he resents his wife and doesn't want to go to Arizona and doesn't really like her and can't say it. And I think that makes him shitty. And then and then when he's
I'm
like,
just so shocked. I have such a completely different read on this character.
I don't think
this
he's
is the
I don't
first
think
time
he's a
I've heard-
heroic guy. Yeah.
Oh wow, okay.
I want to hear the read on when he sings.
When he sings? When did he sing?
London bridges
Falling down. Oh yeah, when they say the title of the movie.
That's
what I read.
creepy.
Is wow, he said the title of the movie.
What was that, sorry?
That was.
I said that my read of that scene is wow. He said the title of the movie.
Okay, for me. So for me, my read on Prendergast is, yes, he is a cop who can't stop. He is always a man who's going to be a cop, but also he's always going to be a man who's a father, even though he didn't get that opportunity. The thing he had dreamed in life was being a father. Now, what I find very interesting is his relationship with his wife in The Office could have been a movie on its own, because when you break it down, it is a really, really, really tragic story that he is a part of, where him and his wife, she was a beauty pageant queen. She was a woman who solely relied on her beauty. She didn't really have the ability to think ahead or have a career. So she was someone who relied on her looks. He wanted a kid. She didn't want a kid. She had a kid for him because, these are the sacrifices that some have to make when it comes to relationships or marriage or stuff like this. It ruined her figure. And then the kid died. Not from anyone or from anything in particular. Sudden infant death syndrome. So with D-FENS,
That's so sad.
it is awful. And with D-FENS and him, I think the difference isn't that one has a kid and one doesn't. It's there's a choice. Duvall says it at the end. You have a choice. I didn't have a choice. You still have the ability. I don't. It's about choices. And Duvall's journey is realizing that he has more choices than he realizes. The thing about Duvall and D-FENS is they're both invisible people. They're both people that have been either chosen to be invisible or choose themselves. Duvall has chosen it for himself for the benefit of his wife. Yeah. She didn't want him to serve on the streets. She literally thought he died and imagined he was a ghost chasing her around the house. That's a terrifyingly sad story. Yeah. So I think he genuinely loves his wife. I don't read this sex angle or anything. I personally believe he genuinely loves his wife, but he's had to give so much up for her that, yes, there is a level of resentment there, as there would be, but it's more that when he says that line of, I love my wife, for me, I read it as 100% genuine, and I think for him, his character is repression on a level where he's had to hide the reason why he's been on this desk for the last 10 years, even from this person he considers a friend, because he even says, what happens between me and my wife is between us and us alone. And that indicates, and that includes this whole revelation that, I'm not going around saying I love her, because that's kind of like this masculine thing as well that these characters all have, that he's kind of pushing back. And the realization that is he has to open up about these things. And yes, at the end, he has to be harsh to his wife, but that's a thing that has to happen, or else the balance is still going to be off. And at the end, when he does still go to Arizona, and he's still like, I'm still a cop at the end of the day, I personally think it's still all right that he's going to still go to Arizona for his wife, because he still loves her, but there's going to be the promise or the idea that the balance is going to be somewhat restored. There's going to be more of a ebb and flow between the two of them. I didn't read any sinister actions or any subdued sexual stuff between him and the others. I think Duvall is just so charming as well that in other actors' hands, that character could easily be read more so like that. But for me, Duvall is just such a charming, likable guy, and he's such a person of compassion, and understanding and empathy that D-FENS doesn't have. So that's why there's also a conflicting thing there. I think these two guys are opposite sides of the psyche, where Duvall is compassionate and loving and caring, but he's still got similar things that D-FENS have, or D-FENS doesn't have any compassion or understanding for anyone outside of himself. Duvall has given up everything of himself for his wife, and while D-FENS is taking everything away from his wife and children and child for himself.
Sure.
And that's what I read on Prendergast. I don't think of him as a sinister character. And when he punches the guy at the end, the guy insults his wife, and this is the first time in this office, and yes, it's a masculine bravado thing, and I understand what you're saying, but when he punches him at the end, it's him standing up for his wife, because who else is?
It's like the two things he could have done there was either punch him or swear, and they saved the swearing for the guy that brought up the you don't swear.
Yeah, Captain Yardley. Yeah. Fuck you very much.
Fuck you. Fuck you very much.
So I'm a bit, like, whenever I've watched this with people, I've never heard this interpretation of Prendergast. I think of him as a purely heroic, good guy, and at the end, he's faced with the biggest challenge of all. You have to execute me, is what D-FENS is giving him. You're not going to get away with anything. You're not going to arrest me. You have to physically execute me right here and now.
Or else I'll do it to you.
Or else I'll do it to you. That's the choice you've been given. And that's a horrifying thing for him to have to go through as well. But he has to do it because at the end of the day, he is a cop.
I just think that his like selflessness is selfish in the sense that he's withholding what he really feels and what he really wants from his wife. And I think that he's like, because of that, distanced himself from her emotionally to a pretty significant extent. Maybe I'm like overselling him being a bad guy. I still stand by there's like something going on with his fellow cop, and I still do think that this movie doesn't walk away with clean hands on the toxic masculinity thing, because part of like his final interaction with his wife, or one of the last ones, is he like the thing that's demanded of him in that relationship and what his arc should be is he needs to be honest with her about like what she asked him at the beginning. Are you just doing this because I want to, or do you really want to? And he needs to honestly say like, look, I kind of don't want to. But the way that he's honest about it is he's like, shut up and make sure that there's dinner for me when I get home.
Yeah. Skin on the chicken, please.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I understand that. For me, I have a more of a face value interpretation of this character. I feel like the relationships he has with women and people in particular are more of a fatherly kind of bond due to his background when it comes to children. I love that scene in the hospital when he sees his daughter on the stretcher. That was... The thing I love about this movie is Joel Schumacher uses every filmmaking technique in the book, basically. Like, he has wonderful setups and payoffs, great mise-en-scene, wonderful cinematography. He uses every kind of shot you can use, handheld shots, kind of intense close-ups, extreme long-distance shots, aerial views at some point. Like, he uses every trick in the book that you can to make a film, and I think that on the script level, this is a really tight script as well for me. This is a one-time writer as well, actor, writer, and it was very hard for this script to get off the ground because of how controversial the subject matter was, and they were going to make it a TV movie, but Michael Douglas and his crew were like, no, this is a great movie that needs to be in the cinemas. I don't know. What about you, Bartek? How do you feel about Prendergast?
No, I also agree that I did see it a lot more on a face value level. I will have to admit, though, I didn't really think too much about the whole fatherhood aspect. You mentioning it now is really like clicking a lot of things in my head. With the whole wife thing, I just saw him as really being dedicated to both his wife and also his work. So obviously, when he's expressing his dedication to his work to his wife, she kind of feels a bit upset about that because she's also been very emotionally damaged. And
yeah,
I guess the film's trying to say that there's no really easy way to talk to her without making her get really emotional. So I felt there was a real struggle there.
Yeah.
And I do remember, this is like 10 minutes ago, you mentioned that he's a much more empathetic character than D-FENS. You do see him smile a lot in this film and have like little laughs, and I did notice that every time it happened, it was like a character bringing up something funny or trying to be funny in a situation where he's not really in the mood for a joke. He will like laugh a little bit, play along a little bit, but then he'll like transition back into, the point that he's trying to focus on.
I found my most... you mentioned the Alan, the phone call scene with him and the whammy burger and his wife. The thing that my favorite scene with Duvall, other than the pier scene at the end, I think that is the stuff that cinema was made for. But when the two characters finally meet, it's so good. But my favorite scene with him was with Captain Yardley, in which he's going over that his daughter died. And it's like this really tenderly quiet scene, but it's still like, you can tell the captain still doesn't give a shit. And at the end...
Like, I'm just doing my job.
But yeah, I love how long the shots linger in that scene for. It's a very well done scene for me where he's like, yeah, we lost her. Oh yeah, her, of course. That must have been rough. It's like, yeah, well, it can be. Like, he's already processed this. I also find it interesting that he's done such a really, such a good job of hiding his personal life that the captain, who's known him for, a decade or more at this point, has no idea of who this man is, other than he sees him at the basic level of he doesn't swear and I don't trust that.
And he's got like files with information about him on there, and he thinks it's
He
wrong.
doesn't talk about his wife.
Yeah, he doesn't talk about his home life because, when he does, it's how do you explain that to someone? It's like,
Yeah.
how do you do that? Anything else with Prendergast that you want to mention? I find it exhilarating when he does start putting the pieces together, like when he goes to Mr. Lee and he's like looking at the billboard because he was there earlier in the day, and like all of this great stuff. You have the guy who's like, I'm in Limonium tiles myself, when they're like pushing the car at the beginning.
He's got the badge. That was funny.
That was great. I think that guy is the writer of the movie.
Yeah,
I
I'm
think I
pretty
looked that
sure.
up
Abby
somewhere.
Rose Smith, I'm pretty sure. It's so weird because it's kind of hard to tell because they're like, Guy on Freeway is his credit, but I'm like, which guy? There's a few freeways.
Guy.
I don't know which one, but he...
Linoleum tiles guy is a better credit.
Yeah,
but,
that would have been great, but yeah, Prendergast...
Ryan, to speak to your question, you asked that was what we think or what I think about Prendergast.
Yeah.
I think it's okay to believe in my heart of hearts that this film is not portraying neither D-FENS nor Prendergast as sympathetic. It's fine. The movie still works in a lot of ways. I'm not saying the movie's bad because I'm not trying to galaxy brain this and say actually both of them suck. Every neo-noir film is like actually the detective is bad. That's just the way the genre works.
Right.
And they are different sides of the same coin, and they're both bad. And like I've seen The Departed. I've seen everything that's like this movie.
I've seen
everything that's
other
borrowed
Robert
from this
Duvall
film.
movies.
Exactly. I've seen Network, which is hits its points a lot better than this movie does in a lot of ways. But the stuff that landed with me for this movie was just how prescient it felt. Again, talking about where white men were at in '93 and the frustration that like D-FENS, all you have to do is learn how to use the internet, and you're gonna be one of the top paid people in the country. You just need to work on your own self. You don't need to kill people.
Yeah, but that's
you
obviously...
can still...
Yeah, but even if he was in the internet age that we're in now, there's not even a guarantee that for him in his brain that would be a case, because his life has fallen apart in his brain. He's lost his marriage, he's lost his job, he's lost his identity as a whole. I don't know, with the way that this character is constructed, that there would be a genuine, in the way that the film portrays it, like for him himself as a character to genuinely reform, because he has set in stone his mentality. Like at the end, he's given an out and he still refuses it because he sees this is the only way this can go. He's a character that's made up their mind on certain things and not on others. We've talked a lot about the complications and intricacies of this movie, but did you guys have fun moments with this movie? Because I think of this movie as a very fun movie as well. Were there any fun things that you enjoyed?
Oh, certainly. I mean, Magellan was talking to me before we got on mic about the scene where the homeless gentleman keeps trying to solicit money from D-FENS and asking him, like, can I have some food? Can I have some money? Can I have your briefcase? Why won't you give me your briefcase? You're an asshole. And then he gives them the briefcase, and all it has is it has a sandwich and an apple, and it has like a full day, like a meal, and it's like,
yeah. Where does he
didn't
eat
have
his
$1 million
lunch?
in it.
Where does he eat his lunch?
I love the line of with that guy who's asking for money, where he's like just hopping between things. He's like,
he's a vet, man.
Yeah, he's like, how could you do this to a veteran? And then he keeps following him, and he's like, I haven't eaten in 3 weeks, and he's like, his mouth is full of the sandwich.
I personally,
thought that was funny.
I love the way that scene ends when he throws the apple and Michael Douglas just casually kicks it with like a little jaunty, like and keeps going, and I'm like,
yep.
That's
one
cute.
of the things I think that makes this movie less of a complication when it comes to the white guy evil protagonist, say in comparison, say something like God Bless America, I don't know if you've seen that movie, is Michael Douglas's performance. I think he does a really great job of grounding this in a serious drama whilst also adding some levity to it. So it makes you as the audience feel like conflicted that you like him or that you enjoy his presence even when he's being a terrible person. Like for me personally, when he's tearing up that Korean store, I find it funny. I find it amusing when he's like, how much for this? And the guy tries to like say it's less than what it is. And he's like, good try. And like this whole aisle's suspect. And like knocks the whole thing over.
He has quips throughout the movie.
And they never feel out of place. Like, for me, the humor always feels realistic. It never feels like, and here's a gag now. Unless a character's telling a gag. Like, you know, his office mates in the precinct.
I always like it. I liked it more when those jokes would come from characters other than him. Because just the morality of, like, finding him funny really bothered me. but like other moments that I was amused by, in that sense, I really loved in the Whammy Burger, the character of Sheila and how
She's
she's
played
like,
by Michelle Pfeiffer's younger sister.
oh wow,
Yeah.
and how she's like fucking with her boss during this really terrifying situation. And Michael
she doesn't give a shit.
D-FENS is like, I feel weird calling you by your first names, and she's like, you can call me Miss Folsom, and he's like, Sheila, shut up. I love that. And
See, I agree. Like, I think that is such a great scene because it makes you feel tense. But the characters that it's happening to, some of them are finding humor in it, or at least adding levity. Like the scene ends with the little boy being the only one who agrees with him.
Right, when he says, "Can anyone raise their hand?"
That
when
was
he's in the
so
burger
funny.
place.
Am I
laughed
the
out
only one who
loud.
sees the problem here? And like the fact that the little boy, someone who's got less inhibitions in terms of being in like the adult constructions that we have of societal norms, the little kid's like, yeah, I see the problem. Of course the little kid would be the only one.
And later on, a little kid's the only one that knows how to use a bazooka.
See, for me, I've seen a lot of these brooding white guy has a vengeance movie like Taxi Driver and God Bless America and King of Comedy and all this, and I find this a bit of a relieving thing that he does have some levity to him because it makes him feel more of an understandable person, because I think the thing is, he is that kind of guy who shoots up the school, who's been often said as, he was such a nice guy. He was my next door neighbor. I couldn't see him doing anything like this. But when we scratch the surface more, when we see what's happening with the wife, with the home videos, those home videos are like some of the most haunting things ever because they just feel so real.
The film ends on one of them.
Yeah, on a slightly happier one, but not really.
Well, the dog's watching it, so the dog
Right.
clearly wants revenge.
But I find that it's a bit of a breath of fresh air in that kind of genre of movie that you do like this guy at some points, or you do find it humorous. To me, I do love the comic delivery of, to the golf guy, and now you're gonna die wearing that stupid little hat. How does that make you feel? And like, that's the end of that scene. I love the comic delivery from Douglas with that line, because in other movies, it could just be like a really dour, grimacing, like, I've just fucking murdered you. How do you feel? But the turning point for his character, I would say, is once he kills the neo-Nazi, right? That's the proper turning point.
You're saying when he goes from white shirt to black shirt, he turns?
Yeah, when he goes from when he goes to military attire. I mean, really, he turns at the very beginning of the movie when he leaves his car. Like, it's just all a decaying
it's just all
spiral from there. But
downhill.
once he kills a person, that's when it really goes extra. One of the things I find very interesting is the editor of this movie brought up something very interesting that really adds to the prevalence of you thinking Robert Duvall is going to die at the end. Now, these are some of the things that I've never thought about before. There's a scene in which a Latino gang tries to shoot him.
Mm-hmm.
I found that scene very scary because he doesn't flinch when he's being shot at. That's terrifying.
Yep.
And he grabs the Uzi and he's playing like he's being all cocky and he's like, you learn to shoot and all that kind of stuff. And he shoots him and he misses and he goes, I missed. And then he shoots him in the leg, right? Originally that scene was cut, the scene of him being shot in the leg, just specifically that shot. And at the end, people realized from watching that cut that it was going to be predictable that Robert Duvall wouldn't die at the end, because we've never shown at that point with that being cut that this character is that unpredictable. So a simple cut of some violence can really affect a movie. And to us, we've seen the cut where he shot the guy in the leg, and in the subconscious of the viewer's brain, we're realizing that this guy is capable of anything. Because later he kills a neo-Nazi who's and usually the people he kills or attacks are usually more justified. But this moment where he's taking more glee in shooting the guy in the leg and proving his point,
shooting a man while he's down,
makes him more of a threat as a character and makes you, the audience, a little bit more uneasy. So I find it interesting, little filmmaking tricks that can really alter a film. I mean, that's one of them. What did we think of the neo-Nazi? Go on.
Oh, sorry. I just wanted to connect that to another scene that I really enjoyed. Like, that understanding adds tension not only to whether Robert Duvall's character lives or dies, but to the other moments, other vignettes that D-FENS goes through. Like, one of the ones that I was amused by was when he's trying to walk on the road that's blocked off for construction, and he gets in the back and forth with the construction worker and is like, admit that this is pointless. And if we hadn't seen him do that, we would have thought like he's not gonna do anything to this construction worker guy. But now we're like,
that's,
ooh,
it's a real
what's gonna
threat.
happen
And
there?
and it's also
Yeah.
neat that the construction thing ties in, because what's the reason he got out of his car? Because there was constructions on the road that you
Yeah.
find out later isn't even for anything. It just adds and adds and adds
Yeah.
to the mental breakdown of this character when you find out literally everything that's happening to him in his brain, and sometimes it is actually confirmed, is because society and it's pointless and things just have to happen because of this thing and this thing and this thing. So it adds and adds and adds. Now,
And
let's talk about...
Sorry, the other part of that scene, and then we'll move on. But the other part of that scene that was amusing to me was the part where the little kid teaches him how to use the bazooka because he saw it on TV. That I loved as like just kind of a isolated critique of, you know, kids are way too used to violence. Yeah, in media, movies and video games and stuff. And I thought that was pretty sharp. Yeah.
Why do you know how to fire a bazooka? I don't know. I saw a show about it.
Yeah, I saw it on the news.
What show is
He said he saw it on the news on a 60 Minutes type show, which is scary. Now let's talk about the neo-Nazi in the room, the character of the neo-Nazi, who actually does have a name, but they still credit him as surplus store owner, so that you just remember that everyone's dehumanized. That character obviously feels very present in the world, because the rise of these kind of guys. The actor of this guy was in Apocalypse Now, so this is like Robert Duvall bringing friends along.
Who was he in Apocalypse Now?
I can't remember, but he was in it. So, but what did we think of this character, what he does to affect the plot and the performance overall?
I've known people like this guy, not literally neo-Nazis at least that I'm aware of, but people who listen to police radio and have stores of old military equipment and have this like fetishization of weaponry, and like he pulls out the can of gas and says it's empty, and that means that it was used. Isn't that amazing? And then that's when he has the flip where he's like, they really killed some, and then he uses a slur, and he's criticizing the homosexuals outside, and he's using the N-word, which is like really just completely slamming him into like super comical villain territory. But like
he would
these
use
are totally
it,
people that exist.
Yeah.
These are people that can own stores and shops and can talk to the police, and he can be shitty to everyone, and this guy gets off fine until finally D-FENS comes in and is like, you are interfering with my life, and I don't want to relate to you. I don't want to have any evidence of you, because nobody should ever associate the two of us together. When in reality,
they are
only a couple meters apart.
The director Joel Schumacher said with that scene that the irony of that with D-FENS is he doesn't see himself as the same as that guy, but that's because D-FENS has a system of judgments and morals that he believes to be justified, but so does the neo-Nazi. And at the end of the day, they're both hurting people, and they're both prejudiced. So they really are the same on a level, except for, you know, some, you know, there's still differences, but yeah.
There is literally a mirror in the scene. So.
Yeah, he shoots the mirror. I did love that scene's intensity. I think the editing's really good with him and the close-up of his mouth, and how obviously, you know, there's that kind of, you know, the prison rape kind of shooting of it, because he's like, this is how they're going to bend you over when I put you in prison and all that, and like, give it to me. And this is why the film, for me, such great filmmaking, because early in the movie, you had the Latino gang attack him, and he takes their knife, and then he puts it in his pocket. It's simple setup and payoff. You know, you put a knife in this act, but it does, for me, a good job of, you forgot about the knife for quite some time, because he never used it, and then he used it here, and you're like, oh, great. And same with the water pistol. The very first scene of the daughter is her asking to fill up the water pistol. You see it at the end. Same with the road. This is one of those scripts and films where it's like, it never cheats. It always follows through on everything, even the dog. Like, you have the grown-up dog, you have the little puppy in the thing. You're like, oh, great. They're actually showing, like, where the dog came from and how it was used as a manipulative tool to help him get back in good graces with the daughter and the wife. Like, all of these things pay off. Obviously, he kills this neo-Nazi, and that's when we have the turn, and we have the great speech with him on the phone to his wife, and he's like, I'm basically at the point of being evil now, and I kind of know that. And we're just going to have to see what happens when I arrive at the house, basically. And it's a wonderful scene. I think it's one of those scenes that encapsulates so many nuances of this character and how he's such a mentally broken guy. And he still thinks at that point he's justified. But we, the audience, know he's not. We're like, oh, God, okay, you know, like, this guy is full-on psycho. Like, at that point, you, the audience, are very much against him. but you're still following him because that's the point of an anti-hero or, a villainous hero. I mean, at this age of movies, we are very much embracing anti-hero kind of characters. And D-FENS is one of those, kind of characters that are influencing the movies we have today and society as well, and he was influenced by society.
So,
yeah.
Right, what's that show, The Boys?
The
new
Boys,
Amazon show
yeah.
about the bad. So there's that, and then just briefly, two things I think about, like progression and editing and build up that the movie did really well.
Yeah.
One is we haven't really talked about the wife, the ex-wife rather,
Barbara
D-FENS'
Hershey,
ex-wife.
yeah.
Her plotline really it's a really crystal clear answer of why when survivors of assault are asked, like, why didn't you report this? This is exactly why, She goes through all the right channels. She has evidence. She has her own story. She's a first-person account, and people give her skeptical looks, and they say, okay, we'll send someone. And by the end of the movie, Robert Duvall's like, why did no police go to this place? We told them the guy is there, and they're like, oh, we went 3 times. We can't go a 3rd time.
Yeah, we can't justify the budget of sending it up.
We can't justify it.
It's just so sad.
It's really sad. Her story is so heartbreaking. And then I think the other thing that progressed through the film really, like, subtly that I liked was D-FENS getting a better arsenal or a stronger arsenal.
Yeah.
Almost like a GTA character or something.
Yeah, he basically gets better weapons as the movie goes on.
I remember
he gets a rocket launcher.
I remember the first time we watched it, I was thinking that they were doing like that old story of like the guy that starts off with a bit of straw and he keeps trading it with other people to like get better and better things, and then in the end he becomes a rich man or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's doing that because in the beginning he gets the bat from Mr. Lee, and he uses it to be like, prices aren't fair. It's very like small scale violence, but it's potent. And then he gets a handgun, and then he gets a submachine gun, and he gets a bag of submachine guns.
A knife, obviously.
And then he gets
at one point.
He gets a knife, and then by the end, he's in full combat fatigues and military attire.
Yeah.
But the film makes a point in the scene that John's talking about with the little kid where it's like, I don't even know why I have these weapons anymore. Like, what were you planning to do with the rocket launcher? What were you going to fire it at? He's like, I don't know, the thing in front of me, the bad thing.
Yeah, the bad yellow monster.
He did not have a plan
and then,
with that.
To go to your point, at the end, he just has a water pistol. Like it's
exactly.
just so
he upgraded all the way.
Nuanced things. The music is very good in this. James Newton Howard did the score for this. That's the guy who did the Harry Potter movies, I believe. I think.
What was that?
James Newton Howard who did the music for this. He did. He's done many soundtracks before.
Did at least the first 2.
But
yes, he's done a lot.
There were so many great scenes in this movie, great character beats, great moments that we could go on more and more about. But I think the 2 prevalent ones that we should touch upon is definitely the scene in which he takes that family and kind of talks about how they're going to go to, how he's going to go home and what's going to happen, and the pier scene. 2 big scenes that I think we should definitely touch upon. Now, Bartek, when he does jump over that fence and there is a family there that's just chilling out, minding this plastic surgeon's house, how did you feel about this scene and how it transpires?
I think I remember the first time I watched it, I was a bit confused about what was going on. But basically, I now get that. They were looking after another person's house. At this point, the police were chasing him.
Yeah,
right?
because he was at the golf course and he shot up the golf cart and all that. Yeah.
Yeah, and this is another thing where he gets kind of offended by how they see him. They think that he's holding them hostage.
Yes.
But he kind of just like drags them along with him to
hide.
To hide.
Yeah. He doesn't see it as like anything. He doesn't see the context that anyone else sees it from. He's like, I'm a family person. I've got a family. Why would I want to hurt yours?
He doesn't realize that for half the scene he's dragging along a little girl with his bloody hand.
And he thinks he's hurt her.
Yeah.
But it's him himself. He's like, he's so mentally deteriorating at this point and so stressed out and so like in his own head that he doesn't understand what his impact is to his family. What I really like about this scene is he doesn't have a go at these people. He sees them as innocent people. He realizes that he's actually on a level, he does kind of understand in his own way that he's hurting these people. He's putting them into a situation. He's not going to take them as hostages.
He feels horrified at the thought that he's hurt the daughter.
Because he thinks he's like them. He's trying to go to a home that isn't his anymore, to a family that doesn't exist for him anymore, and he sees this family that exists, and he's like, yeah, I'm equal to these people, and I'm just going to go home,
I'm
hold
also
my
going to
hands,
hand out my family.
hold my wife's hand, we'll talk about adult things, we'll all go to sleep in the dark, and it'll be beautiful. And it's like, he delivers that speech so beautifully, Michael Douglas, that it almost makes you not realize that what he's kind of talking about, at least in my interpretation, and the film kind of goes on with this, is he's most likely going to kill them and himself.
Mm-hmm.
Michael Douglas disagrees with this interpretation, by the way, but everyone else in the film believes this interpretation, but he doesn't. He's like, no, I don't think that, but, you know, I think
Sorry,
that.
he doesn't think
Yeah,
that...
Douglas doesn't believe that he would have killed the family at the end. He doesn't personally believe that, but I do. And that scene is very emblematic of that, and he talks about how he lost his job and how everything's kind of fallen apart. What about you two guys? What did you feel about this great scene?
Alan, you got a thought there? I didn't really have a particular opinion about whether he was going to kill them or not. I think I sort of disagree with what Robert Duvall says about him. Like, oh, guys, like, you always have a plan. I don't think he had a plan at any point along this way. I think maybe it would have ended up there, but I don't think that was like something that he was intending to do. I think he genuinely was deluded the entire film that, like, he would show up and things would be okay.
Right.
The only ending for him that made sense to me was that he was going to fall into the ocean. I thought he was going to, like, you know, kill himself by jumping into the ocean, because he was. The whole point there is that they're saying he's going to Venice. He's going to the Venice pier. He's going, like, he has a destination.
Yeah, where else would an
other than
Italian
that,
live?
I'm like, right, where else? Like, he doesn't have a game plan. He doesn't, because if he's gonna get back with his wife, then and somehow they try to make that work, he's gonna end up killing her and his daughter.
Yeah, I agree. I think he is deluded.
Through some incident or through some moment of anger. Like, he was gonna do it.
Yeah, I think he doesn't realize it on an intellectual level, but on a subconscious level, I think he has some internal understanding of it, because when he's presented with that at the pier scene, which I guess we can transition into, when he does have that realization of, I'm the bad guy, he's kind of like, me? Like, and he's kind of realizing, like, but I did everything they asked me to, and, like, he's kind of putting some pieces together.
He even asks, like, when did that happen or something?
Yeah, when did that happen?
Yeah.
This pier scene is one of my favorite scenes in a movie. It's one of my favorite ending scenes in a movie. I love the fact that these two characters finally meet one another. It's one of those things where sometimes when the first viewing, I remember you, Bartek, was mentioning, like, oh wow, they're finally meeting each other. Like you kind of get caught up in the pacing of the movie that you're like, oh, I guess they haven't met each other, or wow, they're finally meeting each other. Like, okay, wow, yeah, like it's kind of
like a big build up to a payoff. Yeah.
What I love about this scene is Duvall's performance. You know, he's just so in charge of the scene. Douglas is obviously delivering as well, but, like, the way Duvall's kind of orchestrating the scene and him telling that the story of his life and what's happened while eating popcorn and giving the popcorn to the little girl and, like, you know, showing off his gun. I also love the fact that the film set up that he didn't have a gun early in the movie because they took it away, and then he had to take his partner's gun.
But then it felt like natural for him to reach for it. Then he realized, oh wait, it's not there.
Yeah, it's not there. Great setup, payoff
10 years
stuff.
behind a desk, but it's still there. Wow.
And he had an old gun too. It wasn't even the same kind of newer guns. He had like an old-fashioned gun because he hasn't used it in 10 years.
Yeah.
But I love this pier scene. The music, Douglas running up to the pier and cornering them, like him taking out the gun and doesn't even realize how, like, psycho this is. And like you said, Alan, just how disgusting it is when he starts kissing her and thinking that everything's fine, it's going to be all okay. And, like, it's so disturbing to watch. But Duvall, I think, delivers on this scene so well that it isn't just such a miserable, disturbing scene. It adds some nuances, some flavor to it, and these two characters finally meeting, and it feels like they know each other already, but they don't at all.
Yeah, it's sort of a fun take on... I mean, I really do enjoy films that follow the structure of kind of parallel protagonists that are destined to collide. Like, what else does this? Like, Heat does this.
Yep. Classic example.
I guess Face Off is like a version of this where they like diverge and then collide and recollide multiple times. But I like the twist here where, like, the big speech that's kind of summing it up and speaking to the heart of things is coming from ostensibly the good guy. Which it feels like a very villain thing to be like, this is what you and I have in common.
Yeah.
But it coming from Duvall's character, I don't know. I liked that.
It
that
works
sort of
because he's
inversion of
being
it.
that policeman that he has always needed to be. So he's coming across very like a policeman. Like, this is a matter of fact. You were going to do this. This is what's going to happen. You need to not do that. You have a choice.
He's dealing with someone that he has to arrest.
Yeah, he's dealing with it like
Unlike the rest of the film.
he's a policeman finally. Like, he's actually allowed to gung ho, and you get the understanding he would have been a great policeman if given the opportunity to, but he didn't, or he chose not to.
And good at giving speeches.
He was great at giving speeches. I love that Douglas does, like, when they shoot off against each other, and it is a horrifying thing, you know, like, you have to kill me. Like, she gets the insurance. I'm not going to go behind bars. Like, Douglas is very set in these old school ways. Like, it's very much like a good guy versus bad guy, cowboy and, sheriff and the reckless cowboy coming to town. Like, it's all very good. And I love the fact that Douglas would have got him first. Like, when they shoot against each other, Robert Duvall wipes the water off of his face from the pistol, and Douglas is just so happy, and he's just like, I would have got you. And, like, I find that such an interesting little thing, you know?
Yeah,
that...
he essentially wins despite it being a suicide by cop.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, I think it's one of those great characters meeting each other, and it's the stuff that Schumacher, you know, he really delivers on the cinematography, the music delivers, everyone's delivering great performance. Apparently as well the first scenes they shot, and that's very difficult to do in a movie.
Oh,
wow.
Because the actress, Barbara Hershey, was only available for 2 weeks, and then she was going to go to London. So to shoot that first, and that's a very hard thing to work backwards from that. So I think, you know, this is one of my favorite scenes. I'd sometimes just watch this scene on its own, just because it's such a great scene.
I think it's
of
definitely
these
the
two characters.
strongest part of the film. Yeah.
I don't know. I do like when they go to his mum's house. D-FENS' mum's house. And
Yeah,
it's
that
just
part's
like this-
funny. Yeah.
Funny? I find it terribly
Well,
sad.
there's a part that's funny. That, like, where's he eating his lunch? I thought was funny. Maybe that's sad.
I
don't
find
know.
that horrifying. Where it's like, where
Okay.
is he going every day? I love in that scene too. The mise-en-scene. If you watch that scene again, you see on the wall faded marks of where pictures used to be. Like, these were his wedding photos, and the mum had to take
Ooh.
them down. And the photos of his dad are all military, and you don't get any exposition. You just see that and go, "Oh, I understand. I understand where D-FENS has come from." I get it. I don't need that scene where Duvall's like, I've opened up his case and his dad was a general.
The line where the mum was like, "Oh, I don't know where his ex-wife lives. He won't let me know." That was very kind of telling.
Or
That's
that
good.
he just he just eats quietly, and she's so afraid that she can't eat and spits out her food, and he looks at her like, I want to kill you.
she and Robert Duvall's wife should get together and like cheer each other up.
And that's kind of basically it with Falling Down, you know, the major hits and scenes. This
But one payoff I'll just say that I liked to a joke was, you've already mentioned the scene with the veteran. That's also a double punchline, because earlier on in the film, the two Hispanic gangsters were trying to get his suitcase off him.
Yeah,
And he did not want to give it to them. But then in this scene, he gives it to the guy,
And it's
without
got
a second
nothing in
thought.
it.
And it's just got like 3 things to eat.
Right.
just nothing in it. He would have died defending that briefcase early on. Yeah, that's Falling Down. You know, this is one of those movies that I find it so interesting. You know, with you two, I wasn't expecting like these hot takes or whatever. I find it interesting that this movie can still be considered divisive and controversial of a movie where it divides people still to this day. And when you sometimes say a movie is divisive or controversial, especially ones from back in the day, sometimes that can come across like, oh, that's it, and there's not much of nuance or stuff sometimes. But I think that this movie isn't just existing to be controversial or divisive. I think this movie is one of those great character studies of a certain type of individual that lives in society. I think that the movie's filmmaking and writing are exceptionally done, to the point in which it just looks effortless. Like, it never feels showy, it never feels too grand, yet you do have like these sweeping camera shots where the camera's spinning around Douglas as he's aiming an Uzi, but it never feels like Joel Schumacher's waving his hand in front of you going, look how visual I am, like he does in his other movies, unfortunately. I think it's a shame that Schumacher's never, in my opinion, directed anything as stylish and as as methodically done as this movie. I'm disappointed that the writer of this movie only wrote this and nothing else. You know, it was hard enough for him to get this script off the ground, so he kind of never did anything ever again, which is a bummer. I think the writing in this alone, is not just the character study stuff, but the dialogue and the humor and all of that, and the way that the film is structured with all these setups and payoffs, and it never feels like it cheats. It's a disappointment that he never got to have the opportunity to do another script. But sometimes, you know, maybe you just have one. And that's okay. Like the woman who did To Kill a Mockingbird, she's like, that's just my one book. And then people are like, no, we're going to get the drafts and put that as a book against your family's wishes.
And Joel Schumacher was like, I'm just going to have one movie.
I wish he just was like, I'm going to do this and nothing else. I love him. He seems like such a nice guy, but he seems so clueless about things. Like with Batman and Robin, he's like, yeah, we're making comic books. Not comic book movies, comic books. Bartek, what about you? Falling Down? Wrapping up thoughts?
Fucking hated it.
No,
I thought it was.
Yeah,
Stinger.
No, I had a good time with it second time around. This discussion has been very enlightening. A lot of different opinions, because I guess Ryan and I have kind of been on the same, and you guys have been a bit more on your own. So it's good. It's a film I've only seen twice, and I've only ever talked about it in the context of Ryan's standing next to me. So
yep,
definitely a good experience.
Okay, guys, what about you? Final thoughts and opinions on Falling Down?
It's a testament to the movie that we're able to have these type of varying reads. That is usually the sign of an interesting film worthy of discussion. So I'm glad I watched it. I don't regret watching it. I think it was interesting, and it's very of its time.
I think it definitely is a good film to use as a lens into conversations about cultural sort of controversies and problems within the American psyche that Americans weren't fully self-conscious of in the 90s, or were like beginning to develop a consciousness about, that I think we have a much fuller consciousness of now. And so bringing it into modern conversations about like what's going on in America kind of helps both to understand that these, you know, like D-FENS would have voted for Trump. Like these are not like Trump era problems. These are problems of America that extend much, much further back. And so it gives that context while also giving these vignettes that are in a way timeless. Like seeing him kind of yell at the Korean shop owner to learn the language and stuff. It's like that could have happened yesterday.
And the fact that he's still so ignorant is like, yeah, you know how much money my country's paid your country? No, how much?
Like,
I don't know, but I'm sure it's a
yeah.
lot. And it's still, what does that matter? What does this guy have to do with that? Like, what does this Korean store owner have to do with it?
But I still stand behind the fact that like there are no good guys in Falling Down. There are better guys. There are guys who are like doing some things right, but overall, like I definitely feel, like I said at the beginning, that this film is of the ilk of something like Fight Club, where everybody's fucked up and the film is trying to offer this really scathing critique and sometimes gets caught up in like having fun with itself, that you can push yourself to like compartmentalize. But if you don't read it actively, then I think you walk away being like, that was fun, and not really seeing as much of the critique.
Yeah,
that's my thought.
Fair enough. Falling Down, still generating some interesting conversations. You see, this is one of those movies that I often go, how come people still don't talk about this one as much? I go, this film has so much discussion worth in it, and it's like one of those films that I look at and go, not enough people have actually seen it. And people maybe have seen it absorbed into pop culture inadvertently, like Frank Grimes in The Simpsons is based on D-FENS.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
The dad from Dexter's Laboratory looks pretty much like him.
Or I think it was...
Oh boy.
I can't remember, but there was a film clip from Dave Grohl. What's his band? I can't remember. But where...
Foo Fighters?
Yeah, where it's a film clip of him just basically doing Falling Down. There's a film clip of that. So it's been absorbed into pop culture. This look he has, Michael Douglas...
The phrase "doing Falling Down."
Falling Down. Yeah, guys, thank you so much for coming on and discussing this. I will preface that I will say this now that this is in my top 10 favorite movies of all time.
That's not a preface. That's like a post.
It's a post-credit scene where Michael Douglas comes out and says, "I'm Ant-Man." This is one of my favorite performances in a movie. Michael Douglas, I think he was severely overlooked, and one of his best performances. Even he agrees it's still his best. I was so annoyed. They have those YouTube videos where it's like an actor breaks down their career, and Michael Douglas did one, and he didn't talk about this movie, and I was like, what's the fucking point? What's the point? I don't give a shit about Ant-Man. But thank you guys so much for coming on, talking about Falling Down, the 1993 Joel Schumacher classic gem of cinema. Where can people find you and your stuff?
Well, as aforementioned, we are the two co-hosts of Chatz, a television podcast. That's CHATZ. That can be found wherever you listen to podcasts, and every week we're putting out new episodes. If you want to hear more of us beyond that, we have a Patreon. That's patreon.com/chatspod. And over there we have bonus content where we watch more stuff and do live commentaries, like Spin Polish occasionally does. Yeah. There's a lot of fun bonus stuff there too. So check us out at Chatspod on Twitter if you want to get us on the socials.
On the socials.
And that's pretty much what we got.
Yeah, that's their big plethora of stuff. Yeah, I've been on one of the episodes. I've been on one of the Babylon 5 discussions.
Yes.
Hopefully like to come back on at some point.
We'd love to have you back.
Oh, good. I'll come in and I'll be like, Falling Down was a masterpiece. How fucking dare you keep comparing it to modern day issues and not enjoy it as a film. No. Joel Schumacher did one good movie and should have stopped. I don't know. I haven't seen The Incredible Shrinking Woman. Could be great.
Yes.
Thank you so much, guys. Now, Bartek.
Thanks for having us. We loved it.
Oh, it was wonderful. Now, Bartek,
That's
Chatz. We have a movie for next week that's a listening people's recommendation. Would you guys like to hear what's being served up to us?
Yes, please.
I do.
Bartek, you keen?
I thought you were going to tell me to tell them because I don't know what it is.
We're doing a recommendation from one of our university friends, Lucy. She recommended a 2004 film called Saved. I have no idea what it is and what it's about. I don't know, Bartek.
No, is that the one that has an exclamation mark at the end of the title?
I think it's like Saved from 2004.
Okay.
I have no idea what this movie is.
There better be bells.
Saved by the Bell. Oh, Bartek's a huge Saved by the Bell fan.
In that it's one of the shows I've watched.
Many pieces of knowledge. Yet he still can't give me a direct answer of why he's called Screech.
I've given you the answer every time you ask.
It doesn't sound real. So listening people, make sure to check out Saved from 2004, I do believe it's from. It'll be in the description as well to make sure I got the year right. Instead, it's like, no, it's 2003, you idiots, when Kangaroo Jack came out. Kangaroo Jack, a cinematic masterpiece.
Unappreciated masterpiece.
You can find us on the social medias of Facebook and Twitter, Spit and Polish Presents. Our email is spitandpolished@gmail.com in case you want to email us with suggestions, some comments about some of the things we've discussed in our episodes, threats,
or your favorite
scams, or your favorite word. I don't know. Who is your favorite Chatz? Is it Allen or Magellan? Who knows?
Maybe it's Ryan.
Maybe it's Ryan. He was in one episode. They choose me.
He's my favorite.
He's the sexiest
or
one.
Or me, who wasn't.
Who wasn't. Well, you have to watch television shows and then you can come on. No, invite Bartek to like season 5, episode 20 of Babylon 5 and he has no context for anything at all. He just views it as its own thing and he's just like,
I read it at face value.
So what, people read minds in this show? What's going on?
This is nothing like John Oliver.
What's the deal? I don't know any of these people. That's okay, Bartek. Most people don't. Yes, thank you guys for coming on. It was such a pleasure. Hopefully we can have you guys back on for another movie, maybe one of you guys' suggestions. Who knows? Maybe a movie you like, and then I can be like, it fucking sucked. I'm Australian. Well,
they don't have to like the movie.
I'm of course joking. Until next time, listening people, remember to watch Saved from 2004. That Falling Down should have got an Oscar. To find the Chatz, just the Chatz, not the Chatz podcast, just the Chatz.
We have chats on this podcast.
We do have chats.
So essentially you found it.
And remember, as always, to be kind to each other.
До widzenia.